All right, we have returned, and I think we're going to watch Tom use this fuel nail gun, which apparently is very loud.
It is very loud. And sometimes you get pieces of wood that will splinter off and stuff like that. So eye protection is good if you're doing it yourself.
Okay.
When you're doing it. So.
Fire away.
Okay, ready? Ready, aim. The other thing too, when I'm holding this board down, I don't hold up here.
Okay.
Because, I mean, sometimes there's a knot in the wood and stuff, and it goes sideways or whatever. Okay. So you just got to be a little bit careful about where you're holding this.
All right.
The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab myself some shims, make it a little easier to hold things in place.
And once again, that's because, thing as I was pointing out a second ago, he's using the top and bottom boards as his references for making sure things are nailed in place. But I think it's pretty clear the basement floor is not a perfectly flat, perfectly smooth surface. It's got some ups and downs to it, which is why he has to use these shims. All right,
just another set of hands. Oh, that wasn't too good.
Anything wrong with it?
Well, it's not flush. Not flush as I like it.
Oh, I see.
So I have to figure out a way of getting that down.
How far off is it? Can I feel
about
this?
16th.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely is lower. Yep.
Yep. I'm not sure if it'll be working, but... So now it's about a 32nd.
So he's influencing that board now. You love using that word. So the problem was that this board here, where he has his left hand, was about a 1/16 of an inch underneath the surface of the edge of the other board.
I've kind of forced it to where I want it. Put another couple nails in.
Better now?
Better now.
Okay.
And when you're doing this, start in the middle and work your way out.
Okay.
Rather than starting at the ends and working your way across. Because if something's off, it's off all the way rather than little bits. So.
Want your shims again?
You can twist the board a little bit to make it straight.
I have my ear protection on, so I don't know how loud this actually is. Whoops. So this is how you make up for the fact that the floor is not a perfectly smooth surface. You just carry your shims around with you and you build it up to the height it needs to be. No problem.
Could be the floor, could be the wood.
Boy, I noticed there was, just as you went to put that first nail in, there was a visible, a little gap, maybe a 1/16 of an inch between the two. Boy, the minute that nail went in, it sucked them together.
I can tell you for sure that this board bows down a little bit.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, it does. But that's actually good because it will tend to hold tighter on the ceiling.
Oh.
Because it's got a...
Right. Right.
I mean, I cut the board so it comes out straight.
Now that you've mentioned it to me, I'm looking at it now from this end, and I think I can even see it.
A little bit more bow.
It does have a little bow to it, which, as Tom says, when he jams it up there, it'll help hold it in place. Because that's the top. We're looking at the top board.
Looking at the top, so... wish there's more. More. I've done all the arithmetic on this ahead of time. And what I'm trying to avoid is having these studs on the floor joists above, because I want to attach this wall to the floor joists.
Okay.
All right, so I had to kind of measure it out. And this is 8 inches, actually 7 1/4.
Okay.
Well, from the end. And the key is to make sure that the multiples of 24 and the multiples of 16 don't end up being the same. Okay, because if they are, then that stud somewhere will end up right under that floor joist. They're 24, this is 16.
Oh,
So what I did was I started, this one should be 6 inches over from the floor joist. That means there are no multiples where they'll be the same.
gotcha. So many things to consider. And if you're a beginner, you're not going to know about any of this stuff, which is why we're producing these videos.
Yeah, you get to a point, at some point, and it's not like I never got there, where things line up too well. And you can't, there's the other pencil. And when they do line up too well, there's no way of really, there's no way of undoing that at that point, especially if it's like the next one over. You don't want to undo 2 sections just to get.
So there is a board up there, a sill, that you're going to be affixing these to, or not?
The floor joists are under the ceiling.
Okay.
I'm going to go up and attach them.
Oh.
You can't attach that way.
Okay,
You have to
you can't attach that way. All right.
This can go in contact with this insulation.
It can?
It can, but you don't want to compress it, because when insulation gets compressed, it's less effective.
Oh,
All right, so I'm trying to, at some point I have to find what the correct distance off the wall is before I attach it. So I'm just going to make sure I'm on my 6 inches. All right. That's where I want to be.
so where I'm looking at that paste line, of course, that is the joist.
These are screws holding the sheetrock up.
Yes,
So
yes.
you know they all on the studs.
Correct.
The tape joint going that way is not on anything.
Right.
It's kind of free
Right. That's just where the sheetrock edges met.
Right.
But these here are where they define where the joist is.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's all I know. I mean, you could put a stud finder up there if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do that because these are a lot wider than 1.5 inches.
Okay.
Okay, I think sometimes it's 3 inches, sometimes it's 3 1/4,
Oh, wow.
sometimes it's 2 3/4.
Well, that's a piece
I
of
didn't
meat.
measure these to see what they are, but
Okay.
unless I can't go in the middle of them, I'll be okay. Just
You can't.
yeah, unless I can't,
Oh, unless you can.
but I can, so
Gotcha.
I don't really worry about it much.
So it certainly looks like you can get it there if that's your position here, and that one too. Right? Yeah.
And that's because I staggered them enough. Should be
Right.
about 2 inches. Okay.
Okay.
That's 6 inches over there, 2 inches
Right,
over here.
right.
But again, you'll never get the multiple
Right.
so that you're right underneath
Right.
the borders.
Yep. So now, are you going to nail up into there or screw up into there?
Screw up into there.
Screw up into there. All right.
Why am I going to do that? Because I'm going to take this down and build it on the floor the remainder of the way.
Ah,
I'm just setting it here. Once I screw it in, it's going to be set exactly where it's going to go, regardless. And so, from that point, then I can do all my measuring while this is up here and determine exactly where I want, with a level on it,
Gotcha.
whatever I want to do.
step by step.
Step by step, one step at a time. Finish one before you start the next.
Now, the fact that that board might have been bowed a little bit doesn't seem to actually be providing any compression here.
No,
Yeah.
it didn't help. Didn't help. I guess I could have cut the boards a little longer.
Well, I don't know if I got a piece of lint on this thing. This thing just does not focus well. Keep threatening to get an iPhone 14 and just use that instead of this.
All right, so I know I'm in the right spot with the stud. So what I'm going to do is mark the end. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to start to figure out. I don't want to compress this, so I got to make sure that's fairly level and see where we are in the floor, and do it at the other end too. That's
Okay.
6 inches off, just about.
Now that's something that I wouldn't have had appreciated. I would have thought I wanted to slam it right up against that wall.
Well, you can, but what happens with insulation is the more you compress it,
Yeah.
less it insulates.
Okay.
So, that's got, I think, an R10 or R11 or something like that. They said, the township says you do not need to provide any more insulation. It's sufficient for this environment because they've got the outside has a rubberized
Okay.
membrane around it, so that moisture's not the issue. If I wanted to put more insulation up, I could. I just would have to slice all that insulation so that it
Right.
provide a more moisture barrier.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
without insulating anymore.
So I'm over here right now and I got my hand up. You can see that the stud is right up against the current insulation without actually compressing it or pushing it. I guess that's what Tom's trying to figure out. Where does he want this thing to live? Because wherever it winds up living, the whole rest of them have to live in the same line.
Exactly. And it's not uniform insulation
Yeah.
going down there at all.
Right, right.
But so what I would do is probably not get it real tight here. Maybe give it a half an inch or so
Okay.
to allow for ones that might
Allow for
stick
the
out.
fact that
Now,
as you...
one other thing that's necessary is that this all has to be what they call fire blocked every 10 feet going that way, left and right. Got to be fire blocked, which means that every 10 feet, one of these has to be foamed behind it so that there is no gap. No air gap whatsoever. So,
okay.
so you don't want to put it out 2 inches. If you do that, then you're going to have to put
A
something
whole lot of that
fireproof
stuff.
or
Okay.
use something else that's fireproof. And so, it's you kind of want to be close, but you don't want to necessarily be right. Now, the other way you can do it is take a piece of sheetrock along the side and push that into the insulation a little bit, and then foam the rest of it. Okay, there's lots of ways to fire block. You just got to keep it so there's no way air can go from one column to the
Gotcha. It's an air block, right? Which is the same as a fire block. 'Cause
Fire
a fire
block,
doesn't have air, doesn't have fire. So this whole process here is a judgment call, really. As you just heard Tom say, the factors he's considering are, number one, that wherever that thing gets nailed in place, it defines where the rest of the wall sections will go along here. And wherever that is, will create a gap that has to be filled with foam or some agent to block airflow, called a fire block. So that's what he's balancing here.
If I have to use sheetrock to do it, I don't want I don't want to use sheetrock so they compress the whole thing. I'm just going to
Right.
do a little spot where there's already a stud anyway. All right, I think that's my position. Take.
I was just going to ask that, and so now he's going to measure how far away from the wall that is.
Push this over a little bit.
Because I'm pretty sure he's going to want it to be the same distance on the other end.
And I had my mark on the floor, and I want to make sure, because I moved it out, that I didn't go off that. Find a spot on the cement where there's no junk on top of it.
Right.
Do your measurements. It says 7 1/8. Try 7 1/8 yards.
To that edge, yeah.
See how this flow looks.
So, right about now, that thing is sitting in the spot where it is, soon will be, 7 1/8.
And I learned a few years ago, the hard way, that you're better off to use a rule and a soft mallet rather than your hand.
Okay.
Otherwise, your bones end up very swollen. And then underneath.
So the bottom board is where you want it to be. Now, you'll use a level or something before you screw that in up top to make sure that it's plumb?
Yep.
Okay. See, I'm learning. I'm not just the pretty face behind the camera. The viewers are probably sitting there going, yeah, big deal. We figured that out too.
All right.
And that looks to me like you're going to need to put some shims up there when you screw that up there.
I can just screw it up.
Can you?
Doesn't have to be tight.
But won't that pull this up off the floor?
It would if I put a lot of weight or pressure on the screws, and I'm just going to
Okay.
drill them.
Oh, Joel,
in
I
there.
got you.
And they're just holding left to right and in and out.
Yep. Yep.
So it doesn't really need to be all screwed in, so to speak. All right. So this is as exciting as what?
Well, you know, all of this stuff depends on what you consider exciting. If learning how to do something the right way,
Well, it's learning how to do it my way, which hopefully is one of the right ways.
it is. And to Tom's point just now, this isn't the only way. And that's why at the front of every one of our videos, we have a legal disclaimer that says, you know, these are recommendations. These are ways that Tom has done it over decades that have worked well for him and produced excellent results. And there could be 14 other ways that could produce equally satisfactory results. So we don't offer these videos as the only way, the only prescriptions. And he's using that level to plumb it, and then he's drawing reference marks up on the ceiling so he'll know how to position it when he goes to put his screws in. I know that for me, holding the camera down here on these projects, there's been, just shy of a jillion things that I've learned or made aware of that I would never have thought about, never even considered. I like it. I like it. Come together. All right. See how he does this now. This to me looks like a. And Tom being Tom now, he's going to be doing all this by himself with his own two little hands and not asking for any help. So he's drilling a hole up through the wood to get that out of the way. And once he's got broken through that, he's going to use that level again, I think, or either that or his reference line to... Or did you already go make a mark on the ceiling?
I already made a mark on the ceiling.
I mean, with the drill. With the drill.
No, what I did was I drilled through
Yes.
the wood, but not the ceiling.
Gotcha. I thought so.
What I do is use the screw in the ceiling to make my last minute adjustment.
Another technique.
Because you can kind of slide this in the sheetrock a little bit.
Okay.
It's hard to hold. You know, if they had helped with us, it would be so much easier.
There he goes. I see.
This is just a sanity check.
There's that bubble. How cool is that? So just to remind everyone, why is Tom doing it this way right now, kind of on a semi-temporary basis? That's because he wants to put it in its final resting place, but without making the full-blown commitment. Once it's up there, and these screws are holding it from being, coming out or going sideways, then he can come finish the rest of the design here. Where am I going to put the rest of my boards? Where am I going to put my studs? What'd you call it? Your jack stud?
Jack studs.
Jack studs.
And actually what's going to happen is, once this is pretty much where it needs to be, I'll work on the bottom. And once the bottom is in place, I got to take it down to screw that in because I'm screwing it down. I could put another board on the bottom and build it like we did the fireplace.
Gotcha.
Or I'll probably just put the studs all the way to the bottom board. Once that bottom's in, then it can stay up and adjustments within it.
Gotcha.
At that point. So.
Another good way to do it. Sometimes as Tom exposes these knowledge nuggets, and you can clearly see that he does things the way he does because of his experience and having done these things before. It makes me wonder if you could go back in time would we find a young Tom doing one of his early projects, cursing and throwing things around because he's just now discovered a problem that he has to solve, but once he solved it, he never made that mistake again. And the culmination and accumulation of all that knowledge is what we're putting into these videos. Same trick as before. Drilled up through the board, but not the ceiling, so he could start to screw. And then he'll use the level to hold that thing or make it plumb, and then continue driving the screw up into the ceiling board there to kind of lock it in place somewhat.
And making sure the bottom is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Because when you level this, it assumes that the bottom is correct.
Correct. And at the moment, there's nothing really, other than the fact that you didn't accidentally stub it with your toe, there's nothing that is holding it in place, not even silly putty or anything, the bottom board. That tricky little thing, he's holding the level with one hand.
Looking to the side of it.
Yeah. Did you get it? Is that bubble where he wants it?
All right, that should be secure.
So now, if everything was done right, you should be able to come down and find your same 7 1/8 of an inch dimensions on that lower board. Right?
What's that?
The distance to the wall for this lower board should still be at 7 1/8 of an inch.
Yeah, I marked it with a pencil.
Okay.
And see it's on there.
Oh, all right.
And see it's on there.
Okay, there you go.
The reason being is if you got to measure every time, it'll take twice as long as me, and I'm slow. So you want to kind of, when you find something out or determine something, mark it so you don't have to keep going back and.
I can hardly call you slow when I come down here and I see all this work. What I would say is that you're deliberate and you're cautious.
I'm deliberate, but I mean, a professional would probably be pretty much done framing if he is here as long as I was.
Yeah, and some of them would have done a sloppy job.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. All right, so now I'm ready to kind of put this middle board in, put the jack studs into it, and then once that's done, everything else goes on top of it, so it can be done while it's on the wall.
Ah. So now the question on everybody's mind is, what the heck is Tom doing now? Well, what he's doing is, he has found this surface. This is an egress window. And heaven forbid, one day it has to actually be used for that. But if it does, people that are down here are going to need to step up onto something after they open the window in order to get out. And the thing Tom wants them to step on, he wants it to be level with that surface. So, he's putting one end of the level on his target surface over yonder. And then after the bubble settles where he needs it, he's marking that position on this stud. And he just did that on the other stud. So what we're seeing in action here, right? This is Tom doing one step at a time and then custom building. Basically, that's what he's doing here. He's custom building a framework around his egress window, and he's doing it, I'm going to imagine, quite literally, the way things were done, thousands of years ago. You built things in place to fit the purpose you intended them to. You didn't go sit at a CAD table or a drafting table and design it off to the side and then build it and then bring it over, only to find out that something was off by a half an inch or a quarter of an inch. The way Tom is doing it, it's going to be perfect to his installation on this basement floor. And then he'll begin fleshing out the innards of this framework that he has put up around the window. And I can't really think of a better way to approach a task like this and get it to be exactly what you want than to do this one step at a time approach. We'll come back in a little bit.
The news is it's the same on each side. So, that's to the bottom of my sheetrock.
That's to the bottom of your sheetrock or the top edge of your sheetrock?
Bottom.
Bottom. Okay.
Sit on that. So I need to end up a half an inch below that.
He's accounting for the thickness of the sheetrock there when he says that.
Half an inch of sheetrock. I'm going to have an inch and a half of stud.
And don't forget, there will be sheetrock going on the whole outside this, below the window, above the window, and then a piece of it going horizontal over to that window shelf that people would ultimately step on if they needed to get out. And that's what he's measuring and considering while I'm talking and disturbing his train of thought.
Not so much.
All right, we're back. Now, Tom just came back from the garage where we've seen him many times in our prior videos. And for you viewers who didn't see our other prior videos, we have one out there on an electric fireplace enclosure and then crown molding. And there are many opportunities to catch Tom out there with his chop saw. So he just came back, and what he's done is he's cut himself this vertical member here on both sides, on top of which this one sits. The intent being that the surface of this one comes about even with where my hand is. So that's what he was off doing. I didn't go film him because we've only seen him cut wood about 1,000 times now. And he's very good at it, but, you know. Sorry, Tom. I mean, there's only so much wood cutting we can see.
Yeah.
When we see something that's unique and new, like, you know, the whole planning and execution we're seeing here around this egress window, which we've never done before, then that's the kind of thing we want to share with you viewers. Now, I haven't seen this done before. I guess the results didn't quite come out to his satisfaction.
Couple things that come in play here. One is that it could be just slightly higher, or it could just stay right where it is. When I go to put the sheetrock on the bottom, I want it pitched towards the window.
Pitched towards the window, angled
right.
like
so
this.
If water comes in, it goes back that way,
Okay,
down, around, and everything, rather than coming over the edge.
gotcha.
Okay, that's kind of the theory here.
Makes
So I was just trying
perfect
to see, I'm going to put shims on under this board and the ends to make sure that it tilts a little bit.
Oh,
And I was just trying to see if it looks like it's going to be the right size, which I think it will be. But we'll see.
clever. How about that? You know, when Tom does things like this, you know, I slap my forehead and I go, well, duh, of course. Although, if I didn't see him do that, I might stand here and scratch my head and say, now, how am I going to make this happen? And there you have it. A couple pieces of angled shim stock will tilt that thing.
I mean, it's ever so slight.
Mm-hmm.
Get out there. Really, 1/8 of an inch at most. Let's tilt it. Good work. There.
There you go.
All right, so what I'm going to actually do is leave these between the jack stud and this board so that the board is naturally inclined to go down a little bit. And then when I put the sheetrock on top of it, it will actually be pitched back towards the window.
I'm inclined to think that that's a good idea.
All right, now I think I'm going to screw these in because I like screws.
Well, I've come to learn that you like screws and nails.
I do.
They each have a purpose, and all right. All right, so Tom's doing his usual thing that we saw. Back on the fireplace enclosure. He's pre-drilling holes and then putting the screws in to lock that cross member in at that angle. Tom, you'll leave those shims or at least part of them in there, right?
What's that?
You'll leave those shims or at least part of them in place, right?
Yes, I'll leave the shims in place. But the bottom board isn't attached yet anyway.
Okay.
Okay, and so the next ones I cut for the studs in the middle will also need shims.
Oh,
They
okay.
kind of fit tightly.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
So these.
Well, now, why will they need shims? I thought I agreed with you there for a second, but now I'm confused.
Because the board is at an angle. You want the angle for the studs
Oh,
up here, you
those.
want
Oh,
those?
yes.
You want those at the angle.
I was talking about, I thought you meant this board. That's what.
No, it's already shimmed up
Yeah.
here.
The new ones you're going to add.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I was just debating where I want to
Cool,
screw
cool,
this or, you know what?
Ah, screw it.
Screw it.
Ah, screw it.
There, it's fine. Screw it. I'll screw it on the top.
Oh, I like the way this is coming together. This is neat. So yeah, he's building around this window, making his final determinations and final measurements after the thing has been temporarily installed in front of it. Then he can make more exacting measurements and build it out. Perfect.
Kind of a pain in the ass to be filming this because there's not much new.
Well, what's new is how you're approaching building this framework around this egress window, one step at a time.
Yeah, I guess we didn't see the last one.
Mm. And this little angle trick is pretty cool. These to people who haven't done it before, which is who
Yeah, I
are
suppose.
hoping watches these things. Yeah. And then everything else will build outward from there. Everything will be moving to the left, away from it, and then to the right, down that side. This is kind of like the anchor in the middle. This is why he put this up first. And of course, he's got to be mindful as he puts the rest of them in to always make sure he's getting those stripes there, which are where the joists are, you know, above his boards. The top boards, or his studs. Are you going to be trying to line your studs up with those?
Well, no, I don't want to. I want to align them so that not align them
On the other walls that you're going to
all
put
the
up?
way down.
All the way down?
And this is already determined
Yes.
because where these is determines the next one. That's
Right.
That's at
Okay.
8 inches.
Yep.
Everyone going down will start at 8 inches. Okay.
All right.
Mathematically, and those boards will be 7¼ both.
Because the thing that's going to attach these anyway will be the screws going up into the joist through there.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. That's what holds them in place
Right.
up at the top.
I
The nails
gotcha.
on the bottom. They're not attached to each other at all.
Gotcha.
I mean, what I generally do is when I'm all done, I'll take a piece of 2x4, 14½ inches, put in there and screwed up into two of them, so that it kind of locks two of them in the same spot.
Gotcha,
And you
gotcha.
can nail them from the side. I mean, you can go crazy with.
He's talking about building another one of these frames that'll sit out here, but then tying them together by bridging the two of the pieces of the top boards together with a 2x4. Cool. So after this, you're going to be putting in obviously some studs in here, right?
Yes, I'll put studs in there next.
Right.
And then once that's done, the upper portion can be built while this is in place. I can put it back in place. And because I already have a approved permit, I can just go ahead and make everything permanent if I want to.
Oh, that was good news today too. I just found out when I came in today, Tom got his permits for this project.
Did?
Awesome. And it was a little bit of, back and forth with emails. You were asking some questions of them,
I had
right?
questions, make sure that I knew what happened here in terms of how close you could get it, which they said just as long as you don't compress it.
Okay.
And the second part is how it's going to be fire blocked.
Gotcha.
And, he said just spray behind it, but because of the gaps are kind of large, I'll put a piece of sheetrock and spray into the sheetrock.
Nice. So that's a comfortable feeling, right? To know that you got that permit in hand.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, because you just, until you do, you never know if it's going to be approved as is.
Right.
And if it's not, then you
Yeah.
you might have to undo something.
Right.
For instance, that opening had to be 3 inches bigger. Well, I'd have to take
And
something
you
out.
didn't have to actually provide them plans showing what you.
It had
Oh, you
a
did.
diagram.
Oh, you did.
Exactly,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
with all the measurements on it.
Ah, okay. All right.
That's where it started. I mean,
That-
before I started building anything, I came down, measured everything, figured out where I wanted studs to land, where I wanted walls to be, drew it on a piece of graph paper to scale,
Oh.
an inch to a foot.
Oh, you held out on us. We didn't see any of that sexy
It's
stuff.
11 by 17 pieces or
All
something.
right.
Like that. Big pieces, hard to photocopy, but
Okay.
and laid it all out in there with, like I said, a scale so that the inspector or the township person could look at it and say, okay, this is 5 feet long. That's okay.
Gotcha.
Things like that. So,
And I think, Tom, you also mentioned to me that you've been doing enough of this area, what kind of work in this area. You kind of even know one of the guys at the township.
I know them well. I've done probably, I think, 7 basements in this area.
Okay.
And,
So, and that's comfortable
other
too.
projects.
When they know who they're working with and they've seen the work before, that always helps.
and they know that I care about the code.
Yes.
So
Right. Which is the important thing.
right,
Yeah.
makes a big
Cool.
difference. So, all right.
Well, all right. So then you're going to be putting a bunch of studs in. What other exciting things are you going to be doing today that are riveting?
Riveting, nada.
Nothing riveting for
Put
today.
those studs in. That'll probably take me a little while, and then I'll be ready to start measuring. Like I'll probably put the top in,
Uh-huh.
okay, and put that across,
Okay.
and then I could put the boards that come down this way.
Okay.
Just trying to
Yeah.
line everything up so that I can just, put the sheetrock, attach it to the board on one side, and have it go all the way in and just sit on there. Probably put a bead of caulk so that it has something to adhere to.
For me, the interesting thing I thought again today that was the same with the fireplace enclosure was that Tom, put an outline frame in place, stood it up against the wall, and now he's making his measurements not from some theoretical, position, but from an actual position of where the wood is actually lying, and cutting, putting his lines on the board here. That here's where that goes, and then he came in with the idea with the shimming to put that thing in an angle, and doing some of this kind of stuff as it flows, one step at a time in the actual installation. That's a great approach, and you get exactly the result you want, and it becomes a custom installation that perfectly fits and perfectly works.
No arithmetic errors.
No arithmetic errors. I mean, it could have been possible to lay this all out, and go build it off to the side and then carry it in and line it up, and invariably, somebody would line it up and go, that didn't quite line up exactly as I thought. Good enough. And that's not Tom. So Tom builds it the way he does because it comes out exact, which is to Tom the only thing that is good enough. So there you go. Well, all right.
All right.
Well, should we come back in a couple days or so, or?
Well, what's going to happen is I'm going to finish this up, and it'll take a couple, 3 hours probably to do so. And then I'm going to start building walls going down and going that way. And I want to get as far as the point where I can attach walls going across.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Which means I have to take them down and put support pieces for the wall going across. And then down here, the same thing. There's a wall going across. So I have to
Right. Oh,
figure out exactly where that is. There's a wall coming out of this one.
right.
So I have to know where that is. All these little things.
I definitely want to be here for when you're putting up these other walls that are going to come out this way, and how they attach to these.
Okay, yes, yeah. For the most part, they just nail into them.
Okay.
It all depends on whether you need a nailing edge for or a screwing edge for the sheetrock. If you do, then you have to make sure that this is wide enough, but if the board comes like that, then it's okay. But putting these together, I mean, they don't go together. The only thing that's going to go to them is a wall coming across.
Okay.
But you have to have, I'll show you, I mean, the diagram is two boards like that and a board going between them.
Okay.
That's the same width. So you got a situation like this. So when you look at it from the side, it's board, and board across.
Oh, okay.
So your wall goes right into that board across, and you still have 1.5 inches on either side for screwing.
Oh, how about that?
Okay.
All right.
So that's typically the way a junction is built.
Definitely want to be here for that.
Yeah.
Definitely want to see
And
that.
then you can move that junction wherever you need to within the frame.
Well, then I think I'm going to call this
Call it
video
day.
for today. Let you get back to work with no distractions. I'm
Okay.
sure if I come back in a couple more days, it'll all be done, and I'll have missed everything.
Well, some will be done. Not all of it.
You just let me know when it's time to come back
Yeah.
and to be catching
Well,
something.
This is going to be kind of, I mean, the jig in the wall and stuff will be kind of a little bit interesting, but not really. When I get down there, and I have to frame up the rest of the bathroom with a door, I have to frame up for a tub and a vanity, and kind of get those things all to line up correctly. So that'll be a little bit more interesting.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned.
Are you waiting for anything from the township regarding inspections or approvals or green lights?
No, the only thing I gotta get from the township is I have to, once this is all framed and the rough electric is all done, I gotta get a rough electrical inspection, and then the township will inspect the framing.
Okay.
And
And
at that point, it has to be fire blocked and like that. In other words, when I put sheetrock on it, they want to know that everything
Yes.
behind the sheetrock
Right.
is exactly as it should be.
now are you going to be running the electric yourself?
I will run all the electric myself.
Okay.
The one thing I won't do is hook it back into the panel.
Sure.
What I do generally is set everything up, run all my wires, put all my devices in, and run enough to get back to the panel, call my friendly electrician in.
Gotcha.
He comes over and puts them in. So,
Perfect.
that way, he knows, and plus the electrical inspectors looked at him and said, yeah,
So at the rate you're going and that I see progress down here, about another month, this whole thing will be done.
it'll be more in a month.
I'm kidding.
I'll be framed in a month.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But you do tend to make progress.
I make progress, but what happens when you go to sheetrock is that some 120 sheets of sheetrock have to make their way from the garage down here.
Oh.
And that will be an ordeal. And I have some friendly movers that I have worked with before.
Okay.
They're
Well,
interested.
That's great.
They'll move anything.
Great.
including
Excellent.
sheetrock, so.
Excellent. Well, all right, Tom.
All right.
It looked great. The progress is terrific. Love the insights today in your egress window solution. And hey, maybe in another day or so we'll be back and see where you are then.
Okay. Sounds
All right.
good.
Thanks,
Okay.
Tom.
Have a good one.